so it was like up here somewhere. Yeah, there it is. And then our last room was up here. Okay, there it is. No, it's back over to the right. The Agate knife. Once you collect, and this is the reason that I wasn't really concerned with cheating the power-ups. Once you gain the Agate knife, all of your abilities are bumped up beyond max. The Agate knife will always be in the final room of all 3,000 of them. Well, that was one enemy. I really feel like I should have seen how strong the shield was. Now, gaining the Agate knife will affect the ending. Okay, no, it's stronger, but it's not, like, inhumanly stronger. So 34 up to 42, that's 8 enemies. 8 enemies remain. Where are they? Will we perhaps run into them while just puttering around? Well, let's save, and then we can find a teleporter. Teleporter down there. Oh, there it is. And we're going to teleport back to the hub. We're going to save and quit. And we're going to continue. And I was kind of hoping that that would teleport all the weird guys right up here. Though I am noticing that the question mark... Whoa! Dude's not hecking around. 7 enemies remain. I think I found most of them. I think they're back in jerk boss mode too. 1 monster remains. Okay, we're gonna see if saving and loading did something to get them to actually come around after me. On one hand, I hate to leave one enemy, but on the other hand, I'm not actually... That may be, like, the finale encounter, or whatever. Yeah, the Agate knife buffing all your stats up is also another reason that I wasn't really concerned about cheating up our stats otherwise. Because I knew it was going to be rendered kind of pointless otherwise. Or kind of pointless in a minute anyway. Now, getting the Agate knife does affect the ending. And unfortunately, this means I'm not going to be able to show off the normal ending. My concern was that something would like autosave or something and lock me in. So if I attempted to go do the normal save, I wouldn't be able to just load my old save. I suppose if I puttered around and actually found the save files, I could have backed it up. But also I'm only thinking about that now, so... I've meandered pretty far down here. Where's another teleport? I'm going to do the teleport back to hub and save load trick again. Oh, I was also saying before I got interrupted, I noticed that there are, like, the mystery question marks here that used to be around the rim, or just outside the front door here, aren't here anymore. And I was wondering if those were going to be maybe triggers for future spawns or something. And I think that may have been the case. Okay, let's go see what kind of finale this game has in store for us. And this is because the final room that you show up in is the one that the Agate knife shows up in. That's why I wanted to make sure the final room that I explored was not an important room, because I didn't know how that would affect things. Like maybe if you walked into a boss room or the room down here that we're being guided to. Maybe it would have done something. You capture the cursed seal. Return to the entrance. Checkpoint doesn't seem to be working. Now, you want to know about enemies going into jerk boss mode? If we hadn't killed all of them, Now they absolutely would be. Oh, compass is actually pointing back to the entrance. Getting mighty red here. If I'm not fast enough, do I just die? Oh, compass. Hope it's that way. You know, I'll just look at the map. Where am I going? No, I don't think it's getting more red than this. I guess they wouldn't want to time you on that, since the dungeon is randomly generated. Who knows what kind of bullcrap design you could end up in, where you have to do like 3 laps around the place in order to get back to the entrance. It's probably getting redder as I get closer, if I had to guess. That would make sense to me. The heck is this entrance? Okay, the same entrance we've gone in and out of every single time. I don't know if there's a checkpoint anywhere. Or a teleport. Or a save point. Well, let's die and I'll hoof it back and I'll worry about cutting corners later. So before we hop in, it's important to know what would happen if we didn't have the agate knife. If you show up in the final boss room without the agate knife, as opposed to the question marks, you are straight up told the antagonist's name. It is Werven Anixil, and then Merit says, Anixil, so that's how it is. I assume you worked out a way of using the PSI in this state. So, not happy with your allotted PSI from the dome, you decided to render it in this form and take it all for yourself. What was your reasoning for doing something this rash, though? To which Anixil responds, all you seem to do is complain. That's what I've discovered through this, and it's definitely not part of the reason I did it. I do creative things, like this sort of punishment, because it lets me better understand the nature of all the forces involved. It tells me that you, Merit, really do not have a clue how to relate to other PSI users, and that for the most part you're entirely self-absorbed. It tells me that, while PSI users in general don't really get the ethos of the forces involved here, and that the re-rendered PSI, as intelligent as it is, pretty much entirely understands it, though it was mistaken that the rendering of this form was intentional. Regarding that, by the way, that is the reason I thought you needed a punishment. Making ridiculously inefficient, wasteful use of the limited PSI we have available wouldn't have been a problem if it was just the normal PSI like we'd planned it to be. But you knew full well that PSI users who wanted nothing to do with it were being greatly inconvenienced by usage clogging up the limited ley lines we have. That makes you a jerk. A deliberate jerk to everyone in the world because you thought you could get away with it and that it wouldn't matter. I also take issue with this nonsense about your punishment being severe, because it's not. You can still use your PSI as you used it before, to a similar level of effectiveness. I specifically allowed access to this form of PSI so that you couldn't complain that you couldn't use magic. Now, exiling you to the dome had multiple meanings. One was to effectively tell you, I don't think you have anything of value to do, so I'm putting you in a place where no one does anything of value. I still think that, by the way. Another was, like I said, to see what you would do. Maybe you would actually cast something worth the PSI then, or maybe you would take the hint and just stop it for the week until I decided you'd had enough. But you couldn't do either of those things because all you do is complain. I want you to take a look at yourself and ask what you want to accomplish here, and what you think is keeping you here. Obviously, you have some attachment. Even though you keep saying the new PSI is worthless, this isn't true. Of course, ataraxia really captures a good point here. This is a name we have not had introduced yet. For the most part, PSI users just find you extremely annoying because you continuously set yourself at odds with pretty much every kind of PSI usage but your own, and then complain about it. Do you want things to be different? They certainly can be. Even if I do change, then my PSI won't be good enough. That's bullcrap. All other PSI users seem to be on the path of figuring out how to just use it. You can too. Your punishment is up tomorrow. I'd only plan to do it for a week. Of course, you can continue complaining, and I may have to think of something else to do to you, but I'm not going to kill you. If you want to leave this mortal coil because you can't take it anymore, then leave. If you don't want to leave, then start working on your issues with the new PSI. I actually would love to help, and if you don't want to do that, then I'm sorry, but we're going to continue being useless at magic, because you're going to continue being useless at magic, because the way you are now, it's not surprising at all that your PSI ability is as stunted as it is. To which all of that, Merit responds, the tainted PSI has driven even you mad. Mad with power. This is a blow I must strike. For everyone. For humanity. And then the fight begins. It's a guy with question marks for a name. It's some guy. He's got a face. Merit. Merit is technically us, except for Reimu now. Anixil. So that's the guy that just showed up. So that's how it is. I assume you worked out a way of using the PSI in this state. So, not happy with your allotted PSI from the dome, you decided to render it in this form and take it all for yourself. What was your reasoning for doing something this rash, though? That was what you wanted to hear, right? All you seem to do is complain. That's what I've discovered through this. And it's definitely part of the... Oh. If I've learned anything in life, it's that pause followed by an oh is when he realizes you have the agate knife. If I've learned anything in life, it's that things are often not quite as they seem. You couldn't use the agate knife, so you attempted to hide it. Unfortunately for you, I found it and recognized it. No, it's not just recognizing the knife at all. You were actually able to use it too. So, you too knew the secret. I was one of the few that he told. And so I know. Well, it wasn't a bad attempt. If I hadn't found that, I would never have known. Now that that's taken care of, I might as well finish what I came here for. Prepare yourself. I won't hold back. There's not a lot of point now. Look, he shoots out a lot. As long as I can stay on the other side of this block, I'm not too worried. Guarantees he has like 18 phases, though. Okay. What kind of attack was that? Okay, another phase. I got bonked. Got bonked twice. Getting the heck out. I'm getting bonked a lot. And again. Oh, I have double health. That's another thing the agate knife does for you. Okay, you just start over here. That's another thing the agate knife does for you. Oh, crap. Is it doubles your health. Ah! I don't know when it died, but I've apparently killed every monster. So I was focusing a lot on the reflecting lasers. But a lot of the directional lasers are actually coming from him. So there is a significant amount of benefit to actually hiding from, like, breaking line of sight with him. He has another phase, son of a gun! Dude is off his nut. Ooh! We got him! Thankfully, final phase was a victory phase. The fight, by the way, without the Agate knife, does seem to be significantly easier. It is functionally the same, he just fires about 50% of the projectiles. And there is no third victory phase. The fight ends after the second phase. The ending that we get now says, activating the seal quickly unblocked the ley lines and allowed PSI to flow through the dome again. The remaining shadows were quickly flushed out. Where Van Anixil's unconventional use of the PSI resulted in him being burned out and rendered powerless. Merit will see to it that he faces judgment for his crimes. Neither of the two PSI weapons housed within the dome had been touched. However, Merit released the locks on the PSI flowing through the dome, releasing the flow of PSI into the atmosphere. The Orchestome was originally built to centralize the limited PSI available to everyone. However, this made the existing reserves more vulnerable to malicious PSI users. While other PSI users initially resented Merit for his rash behavior, they eventually adjusted to the decentralization. Eventually, PSI users grew to adapt at manipulating the diluted flow of PSI, that they were capable of the same things as before. Each PSI user would keep their own individual reserves of PSI for when they needed to wield greater power, and the balance of power was restored. Activating the seal quickly unblocked the ley lines and allowed PSI to flow through the dome again. The remaining shadows were quickly flushed out. The traitor, who was never identified, perished in the ceiling. It soon became clear that the traitor had managed to betray and kill the real Werven Anixel during his experiments on the PSI. If the Agate knife was never found, nobody would have been the wiser, and things could have turned out very differently. However, there was one last thing for Merit to do. Merit decided to assume the role of custodian over the Orcus Dome in Werven Anixel's place. He resumed the experiments on PSI and found ways of making the dome's remaining supply go as far as it could. Other PSI users were suspicious of Merit, just as they were wary of Werven Anixel before him, but they soon adjusted. The balance of power was quickly restored and stabilized for eternity due to the work of Werven Anixel and now Merit. I always appreciate a credits list that's entirely just one guy. Somebody in the Discord mentioned knowing the guy. And, like, maybe they hadn't talked in a while, but they were... Apparently they're still doing alright. Which is good to hear. Who is that? That's the main character. So what exactly is the plot here? What really happened? The premise that was initially set up is mostly accurate. PSI is an energy that exists in the environment that people can manipulate to do magic. The Orcus Dome is a massive underground structure that gathers and focuses PSI. Ley lines flowing out from the dome allow PSI users direct access to the dome's PSI. The dome's PSI at some point began to act strangely, and the dome's guardian, Werven Anixel, banned use of the dome's PSI. Merit, our player, didn't particularly like this and started causing a ruckus, being loud and a nuisance, leading to him being trapped inside the dome as punishment without direct access to the dome's PSI. Inside the dome, Merit discovered that the real Werven Anixel was killed by an imposter who then corrupted the flow of PSI and took all of the dome's PSI for himself, letting him effectively rule the world. In the normal ending, Merit defeats the imposter, thinking it is an Ixel, and has him imprisoned for corrupting the PSI. Merit then destroys the dome's ability to focus PSI, releasing it all into the atmosphere. This gives normal PSI users access to probably more PSI on average, but they are limited by what PSI just happens to be in the atmosphere near them. In the good ending, Merit kills the imposter, removes the corruption, and takes Anixel's place as guardian of the dome, once again giving direct access to the dome's PSI to all PSI users. He continued Anixel's research into the dome, and eventually was able to ensure that pretty much everybody had as much PSI as they wanted. So what is the Agate knife, and why is it so useful? This isn't really directly explained, but my guess is that it is a tool that lets you directly channel the power of the dome. Merit was able to find the knife, perhaps given to him directly by the dome, having completely explored it, and was then able to directly use the dome's PSI against the imposter. The imposter was unable to use it, perhaps because he corrupted the dome and generally wasn't giving it a lot in the way of respect. A few other tidbits here are dropped, but none are given any direct explanation such as that Merit was one of two people told, or one of a few people told, supposedly how to use the knife, or perhaps that it even existed, or some other secret, which then may have led to the reason he was stirring up all this trouble to get in here in the first place. Who is this someone? It may have been a Nixel, who of course knew a great deal about the dome, and perhaps was friends with Merit. This of course would lead Merit to suspecting the imposter wasn't the true Anixel, because of course he would have known the true Anixel and was told some of the secrets of the dome by him. That of course is pure conjecture. And that is Meritous. Thank you very much for joining me on this grand adventure. Maybe we had some humps along the way. I think I understand a number of things more than I did when we started. Until next time, everyone.